I've lost a lot. Cancer's taken a lot away from me, but I choose that to be grateful for the time that I had with them.
I don't know if people necessarily recognize that they have the ability to choose that.
When adversity came, I could have fell apart, but I chose instead to follow my heart. When adversity comes, I will never run, I will adjust, adapt, and overcome. Vision.
Hello, everyone. Welcome one, welcome all to your one place for everything empowerment. I am your host, Tariq Williams, and not only I am Vision of Hope, but we are Vision of Hope. And welcome back to the Speak Your Vision podcast. We have a great episode here for you today. I'm truly looking forward to the conversation here. A very close family friend, family member. We are family at this point. Okay, we've been through so much. We've gotten to know each other. Cancer Navigator, amazing individual, Miss Tina Withrow. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thank you so much, Tariq. I'm so happy to be here, and I follow you and I listen to your as you speak into us and you speak life into us and vision into us, and I just love it, and I'm very proud to be here.
You know, Tina, I've been thinking about doing this podcast with you for an extremely long time now, and I'm happy we've been able to make this come to fruition. Kind of just bring our visions and our mindsets together. And I've learned so much from you, and I think that everybody here listening will learn a lot from you as well.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you.
Absolutely. So we like to have fun here on the podcast. Language is very important to us. And language is just one of those things that it's communication is everything, right?
It is.
And so to help us set the tone with the podcast today, give us 2 words that kind of describes how you got to where you are in your life right now.
I think in doing what I do both professionally and personally, I would describe it as a little bit of tragedy and a whole lot of hope.
Oh, okay. Interesting. And why do you choose those 2 words?
Because I think that, we all have things that happen in our life. The one word you will not find me talk about ever when you're putting myself out there is victim. I was taught at a very young age not to be a victim of my circumstances. And so I got into cancer because cancer's affected my family so much, but I learned early on that it's boots on the ground and you cannot be a victim of your circumstance. So I've carried that all the way through my life. My husband has carried that all the way through his life. And together, whenever tragedy has struck, yes, that doesn't mean that you walk around like a Pollyanna saying it's going to be fine, it's going to be fine. But you find a way to take that negative, make it a positive. And then if you can tell the story, we don't realize that we're all storytellers. Some of us, Tariq, like you, are better storytellers than others, right? But if you can tell the story of triumph over the tragedy, then somebody else can look at you and say, wow, not only did they have a worse circumstance than myself, but look what they've done.
Absolutely. You know, when you kind of touched on a couple of the avenues that I want to get ready to go down here. And we talk about your job title as being your business, which is you being a cancer navigator. I had never actually heard of that phrase before, actually, until you and I got connected and we met. And so, and you mentioned about your business and your personal life and everything like that. And let's start off by asking the question, what made you want to be a cancer navigator, and what actually is that?
So I have to go back a little ways. My mother was diagnosed with cancer when I was very young, and my parents did not have insurance. It's kind of interesting when I was growing up to have no insurance, but then shortly after college, everybody had insurance. And now in this country, there's lots of people that don't have insurance. So it's amazing how things have come almost full circle. Because I was the little girl whose mom had cancer. She was sick all my life. And my dad we didn't have health insurance, and he had 7 children. And there were times that we weren't real sure what to do. So he would make payments every week or every month to the hospitals, the doctors, the pharmacies, all of those things. So I grew up knowing my dad negotiating what he could do to take care of his wife. And then my mom died when I was 11. And as we fast forward as a young mom and wife, my sister, who was my mother figure, was diagnosed with head and neck cancer. And that's what propelled me into a life of service, because I was devastated when she got the cancer diagnosis. She had head and neck cancer. She had a trach. And I just felt, my husband said to me, you need to get off your butt and you need to do something about this. My husband's always been my best advocate and my harshest critic, and he gets me moving when I need it most. And so I became very involved with the American Cancer Society. And that led me to a group of physicians. I had worked at United Healthcare, and a group of physicians asked me to come work for them. And so I helped run with other people. I was a director for Texas Hematology Oncology. And I did that for 11 years. And about 12 years ago, I decided to start my own company. I was on the board of the Livestrong Foundation, and that when you get involved in the nonprofit and service world in cancer and other ways, other organizations, you start developing a wide network. And I have always had a desire for service. My husband and I both are service-oriented people, and I loved my job with Texas Hematology Oncology, but healthcare changed. And I became very disillusioned with healthcare. I became very disillusioned with how people were treated who were diagnosed with cancer, and how people were treated if they didn't have insurance or didn't have money. During that time, I had the magnificent opportunity to work with a physician in New York City by the name of Dr. Harold P. Freeman. He was a surgical oncologist in Harlem, and he noticed that there was a large proportionate amount of African-American men who were being diagnosed with colon cancer, and they were going into the hospital. They were waiting way too long to go into the hospital, and they were dying in the hospital, and it was breaking the hospitals. The hospitals were losing money. And so he set out on a dream to start a project called Cancer Navigation, patient navigators. And so navigators are lay people, and some of them are nurse navigators. And so I had the opportunity to go work with Dr. Freeman and train with Dr. Freeman, and it totally changed my life. It was everything that I wanted, everything that my dad had when his wife was sick. And I came back from that experience rejuvenated. And then when it was time for me to tell my husband I was unhappy with my job, my husband once again said to me, "You've always wanted to do your own business. Get off your butt and make it happen." And so I did. I jumped off the cliff and I said, I am going to do this. And that was 12 years ago. So I have a company in Rockwall, Texas, outside of Dallas, and it's called HealthSync. And we break down barriers to care. Barriers to care are financial, spiritual, social, economic. And that ties in with the Harold P. Freeman Cancer Institute model. And so we do things that other organizations can't do, won't do, don't have time to do, don't want to do it. We get to know the patients up front. We are there when they get their diagnosis. We work out a plan for what they need to do. We help them with second opinions or third opinions or fourth opinions. And sometimes we're there when they take their last breath. Along the way, I've partnered with other organizations, and I can honestly tell you, I hope it's my greatest legacy.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. A lot of powerful stuff there. And I think about the different connections you're having with all these individuals that you are working with in terms of all different types of cancer, and figuring out how to find those resources for those individuals. And so kind of makes me think, I know back in October, that's breast cancer awareness month. And I don't necessarily, and actually to even kind of make a link, it's also blindness equality achievement month, but I don't necessarily subscribe to the fact that these different things only matter for 1 month out of the year, right? They
Absolutely.
they are things that are a part of individuals' lives on a daily basis, and we, unfortunately, we are told to only recognize them in one specific month. Um, and so bring it back to what we're talking about, and you're having a conversation with an individual, you're meeting them for the first time, who's been diagnosed with cancer. What is it? What does that conversation typically look like? How do you maintain your composure?
Well, you can get caught up in the actual tragedy of the moment.
Mm.
And people always ask me, how can you do this? This must be the most depressing thing. You working with cancer patients, you're working with patients who are dying. It's the greatest job in the whole world. It's amazing. So when I meet with somebody, or when my team meets with someone, what we do is I have a phrase that I share with staff or anybody that is trying to help someone in a health crisis or cancer. And I have to tell myself this too: listen more, talk less. So you start out, when you meet somebody who's been diagnosed, you listen, and they tell you what happened. For a breast cancer survivor, a lot of times I felt a lump, or I went to get a mammogram, and then they tell you the story. And by listening, you can get a feel for the dynamics. What is the dynamics? So then you ask, do you have good support? Sometimes that leads to lots of tears. Sometimes that leads to, I don't have anybody. And so you talk to them about what you're going to do for them as far as diagnosis to get them into treatment. But cancer or illness is more than a diagnosis. It is a sucker punch. Cancer is a sucker punch when you get diagnosed. So you got to give them the tools. What are they going to do to get their power back over cancer? Because it affects, you feel like you can't do anything because you have a cancer diagnosis. So we try in little bits to give them the tools that they need to get their power back. Because when you're powerless, you can't do anything. Then the stinking thinking sets in, and you feel like everything's gonna fall apart.
So you said that powerless. So let's walk through that a little bit, because whether it's cancer, blindness, several different things under and over the sun, right? I feel like at one point or another, everybody watching this has felt some sort of powerless feeling. Somebody tells you, Tina, I'm powerless. There's nothing I can do. How do you respond?
Well, the first thing I would say to them, powerless in what? What in your circumstances? Is that something did somebody plant a seed in you a long time ago? What, are you a self-sabotager? Does it matter? Because for some people, it doesn't matter what they do. They're self-sabotagers. If something's going too good, have you ever done that yourself, Tariq? Something's going so good and so wonderful, and you're like, oh my gosh, something bad's got to happen.
What time is it right now? I think I'm going to mess this up in about 34 minutes. I don't know exactly how or why, but it's about that time.
Yes, absolutely. And we can do that. Some people do that to themselves over and over and over. And I just had a breast cancer survivor, and she, a lovely, lovely girl, but she had all the earmarks of a self-sabotager. She cannot for a minute think, not only that it isn't the cancer, it's everywhere else in her life. Things have gone off the rails, and some of it she's done herself because she can't envision a life that's wonderful and good and happy. So I think we do it to ourselves. So I try to get in and figure that out. Some people are worried that you're going to take over. Some people don't feel comfortable with their medical team. And we have a right in this country to pick who we want to be on our team. Tariq, you have a team. They just didn't fall in your lap.
Right.
You know, you do your due diligence before somebody gets in your inner circle, right?
And you know, to even put a specific point on that, not everybody's going to make my team.
Oh,
you know?
yeah.
Not everybody's going to be a part of the squad, you know? So,
That's right.
and some people will let themselves go. It's kind of a part of that journey, but continue.
Yes. So we get to know them. We try and get to know their circumstances. For some people, a diagnosis, am I going to lose my job? How am I going to pay my copays? It's October and I have an $8,000 deductible. And oh, by the way, I have an $8,000 deductible come January 1st. How in the world am I going to do that? So you say to them, you remind them that we're always going to have a plan A, B, C, D, which I believe we should all have that in life, right? If something doesn't open or a door closes, what's your plan B? What's your plan C? So you slowly, you can't hit them all at once, because if you have what I call diarrhea of the mouth, then you scare them because they've already been met by a physician that's only spending 15 minutes with them. That's all physicians can do now because the reimbursement is so low. If they don't see a lot of patients, then they're not getting paid enough to run their office. So they get 15 minutes with somebody who's telling them what they're going to do to save their life. So you slow that down. You mix in education. If they're a fact finder, you tell them where to go, what sites to go to. You remind them to don't be a Google Doc because that will scare you. It can harm you. You need to be careful. You have to go to good sites and get good information. And then you slowly talk to them about their team. Who's going to be on their team? For some people, there's nobody. For some people, I'm one-on-one with that person and I'm their team.
Right.
And then you have to get with the medical team also so that they know that you expect what you expect from them. We like to have our clients type out a what we call the Odyssey of my illness.
Okay.
And we want them to talk to just write out who are they, because they were more than their cancer diagnosis or their illness. What are you about? Tariq, if I had never met you and you and I were facing something challenging, I would want to know, who are you? Now I know you very well, so I could define you as lots of things now, but at first I wouldn't know that. So how can I get to know you intimately if I don't know what rocks your world, right?
Yeah.
What are you passionate about? I know that now, but at first blush, I wouldn't know that. So I want to know what that's all about. Now, I'm really glad when I got to know you that I do know some of the things, and we share some of those, love of sports and all of those types of things. But if I didn't know that, but by writing that out, and then you also put in there what do you expect? I'm a fighter. I want to win my journey. I want to see this cancer in the rearview mirror. For some people, it isn't that. For some people, it's, I want to be here long enough to see my grandbaby. I want to, do this. People always ask me the same thing every time. When I'm all done, I say, is there anything that I can do for you? Is there any questions I haven't answered? And they, a lot of times, always get emotional and they say, am I going to die? And it doesn't matter what diagnosis they have. They're always worried about that. Am I going to die? My niece was diagnosed last week with a reoccurrence of leukemia. And I got on the phone with her and I said, okay, what are your questions? She got very emotional. Am I going to die? And what I answer it always the same, not today. And if you don't want to die today or tomorrow, then let's develop a plan. But we're all at some point going to die, but you're not going to die today. And let's figure out how to not make that happen. And so you don't want to sprinkle fairy dust and unicorns over somebody. You don't want to say, gosh, I'm going to sprinkle you with fairy dust. It's going to be fine. It's going to be okay. Because everybody has a story about somebody that had cancer or an illness and died. And sometimes people tell you too much information. You know, you say to your neighbor, gosh, I've been diagnosed with cancer. I had an Aunt Sally and she was diagnosed and she was dead in 2 weeks. You know, somebody's going to tell you that story.
Right.
But you balance it with fact, and then you get to know that person and you figure out how can I help them? How can I do that? Probably much in the same way you do in your field, right? What can I do? What's their passion? How can I reignite that passion? And the good news is that you can live in between office visits. You can live in between chemotherapies. People just don't realize that you can work around it.
Right. You know, one thing that you said a little bit ago that really, I think is really easy to resonate in the fact that you said that an individual who has cancer, they're more than just their cancer diagnosis. Right. We immediately, I feel like, try to label and put people into one specific box, like a cancer diagnosis, their blindness, the list goes on. Right. We could even get into like even backgrounds and culture or whatever. Like there's a list of things that we try to group people in and put them in this one specific box. But there's a lot more to every individual than just one specific thing. I tell my clients all the time, don't let your blindness define who you are. You're way more than just that.
I can tell you something else since I've known you for quite a while now. I don't see you as a blind man, even though I know you are. Why?
Right.
Just because that's you feel comfortable in your own skin. And you would feel comfortable in your own skin whether you had full sight, partial sight, or complete blindness.
You know, if I'm being honest, it took me a little bit to get to that point, right? When I first lost my vision, it took some finding of myself, but then it was funny because like, wait, why do I have to find myself? Like, I'm still me. I thought that my life was kind of taken away from me, but then I realized that as going through my journey, in a sense, I was almost given that life to recognize more of who I am, pre-blindness, post-blindness. I'm Tariq Williams at the end of the day, and I have a lot to bring to the table. And that goes for you, Tina. That goes for anybody listening. You're more than just what people are saying that you are. And don't let people box you in because you have a whole great list of traits that make up the amazing individual that you are. And
by closing off, don't you think, Tariq, if you were to close yourself off, you limit those possibilities.
You do. It is so important to have an open mind. So important to have an open mind. And that kind of leads me to where I want to go, because we were just talking about, you mentioned your niece, right? And your two words that you stated in the very beginning was tragedy and hope. And this seems to almost be, I don't want to say a theme, but something that has happened in your life a few times, how you've had some type of tragedy or you've been around individuals who are going through a tragedy, but yet you have been that individuals. So explain to me, how does an individual go from tragedy to hope?
So I think that as a young girl, I lived my whole life with my mother having cancer and being ill, but I think my father set that tone. Okay. My father set the tone, and I think we set the tone for our children, or we set the tone for our life. It's no different than, somebody can be divorced and they be divorced for 30 years. And every time you see them, they talk about their divorce. For anything, it's they kind of wear it as a badge of courage. People always say to me, oh, that had to be awful that your mother died when you were 11. And I'm like, well, it was my life. They're like, but how did you survive it? I'm like, oh my gosh, make no mistake. I had a great childhood. Do I miss my mother? Oh my gosh, I miss her tremendously. I still speak her name when I speak in public. Why? Because I don't want people to forget her. And my 4 siblings that I've lost to cancer, and my father that I lost to cancer. I've lost a lot. Cancer's taken a lot away from me, but I choose that to be grateful for the time that I had with them and the avenue that cancer gives me to, by showing people that I'm vulnerable, that opens us up to a whole conversation. And I'm not afraid to ask the question. I think one of our first deep conversations that you and I had was talking about, the tragedy of losing your sight right when you had every kind of door opening for you, and sports and all of those things and the future and all of that. You knew exactly that moment that and what that felt like. But when I met you, you're on a trajectory of what you wanted to do with your life, right? So, but I never looked at you and was like, oh, poor Tariq. I never felt that from you. You've never, anytime I've ever been around you, it's never the pat, oh, it's okay. You wouldn't like it. Number one, you'd probably be mad if I've acted like that. You've probably had people do that to you because they don't know any different.
Right.
And, we teach people how to treat us. We really do.
So you mentioned a little bit about my journey, and I'd like to think that there's 2 different statements I like to think of how things kind of worked out for me, in terms of one being a part of my life where I was satisfied with who I was, but not proud of who I was. And I would say you met me definitely at a time where I was proud of who I was, but no longer satisfied because those limits were gone.
That's right. You got that exactly right. Yeah, and we still are. I'm way older than you, and I'm still trying to figure out what I'm doing with life. And life has taught me that you can start over at any time. You can expand at any time. You can, you and I've had lots of discussions about that. The sky really, truly is the limit. And tragedy is still going to happen along those ways. And some people are going to be there with you, and some people are going to choose to leave. I remember when I did my business plan for HealthSync, my very best friend, I took her to a long dinner because I wanted to tell her I was so proud. And she said to me, why don't you just go get a job? She kept saying that every time I would show the slide presentation, and she would say, just go get a job. To talk to that friend now, what she says to me is, I'm so proud that you didn't listen to me, because she sees I'm so satisfied in what I do.
Yeah.
Working with survivors and people in the most vulnerable time of their life, for me, is when you can help somebody at that most intimate time of their life.
Yeah.
It is so rewarding. It doesn't always turn out like you want it to, but life is like that.
So, before I get into where I want to go, first thing I have to say is, Tina, you mentioned your age. I think you look great for 25.
I know. I'm trying. I got to get some false eyelashes though. I'm hoping that, I can find somebody to help me with that, but it's okay.
And then the second thing, you mentioned a little bit before that when people brought all of your hardships to the table in terms of having conversations with you, like, how are you doing X, Y, and Z with A, B, and C hardships? And you mentioned that you choose to be grateful for the time you've spent with your family, and you choose to be grateful for the things that you have and not dwelling on some of those hard times and the negativity that might bring. I don't know if people necessarily recognize that they have the ability to choose that. And I guess I want to ask you, how have you had the ability to choose gratefulness over despair in some of those situations? And how do you have that power?
So I think it's a very good question, number one. Don't get me wrong. I'm in the ditch sometimes. You can't do what I do and not be in the ditch. And Tariq, you've been very good. You know that you and I've had deep conversations when I am in the ditch. And that helps. You got to reach out to somebody that you trust, and you can say, hey, it's not been a good week. I don't always. I've been known to get in my car and cry like a 5-year-old leaving a tragedy, right? But for me, I also say, God, if we weren't there to help them, I don't worry about the people that we help. I worry about all those people that don't have anybody and feel like everything's hopeless. And, I just met with somebody, a young gal and her husband who had no health insurance, and they've been sitting for 3 months waiting to get treatment and feeling like they had never had anybody just even explain anything to them. And so when you can help that, it somehow says, you say to yourself, I don't always have good days, but I'm helping. I'm really helping. And as long as I can continue that, then I've done okay. I sleep well at night. In my previous job, when I ran the cancer center, I had sleepless nights sometimes because I had to stick to some rules within that organization. And now I can think outside the box. I can really partner with physicians and medical centers and cancer institutes and the patient and their family. And the outcome of that far outweighs any tragedy.
Yeah. Wow. That's amazing. That's amazing. Thank you so much, Tina. I think that just those statements alone, I think are so powerful and resonate with so many people, like it's resonating with me right now. And I think being that light to others is just, you never know whatever somebody's going through. And if you can find a way to be there for someone, I think is so important. And I would say also having, I would say, the power to, when you're in that ditch, like you mentioned, and feeling like you have somebody to go to and ask for help, but then having the courage to ask, I think is just important as well. And that it's okay to ask, and it's okay to not be okay.
It's really okay to not be okay. I think probably I share my vulnerability a lot when I'm talking about my sister. She was our everything, the glue that held our family together. She was our mother figure. I'm telling my age when I say my mother was sick and there was no such thing as daycare. And so my sister got permission to take me to high school. And so I sat in the back of each class. You just get it done. But my sister, when she was diagnosed with cancer, I was so devastated. But she taught me. She had a trach 25 plus years. She lived with a trach. And, that's a disability. And sometimes people treat you like you're stupid when you have to talk like that. And to watch her, and then to watch her overcome cancer, and to watch her then do treatment, and then to watch her make the decision that she wasn't going to do treatment anymore, and to watch her leave this earth, and to watch her faith and her family, and to watch all of that, it shapes you. So if you can be vulnerable enough to say, I'm hurting, this isn't easy for me, the nuggets that you get from people and the tone that is set has stayed with me forever. I will never, ever forget her, ever.
Is there any emotion or a feeling that when you think of what your sister has given you, is there something that you necessarily think about when you think about, like, she made me feel like this, and that helps me continue to move forward with what I do on a daily basis?
She was the gal that if you ever went to her house, she always had a cold Pepsi. Pepsi was her favorite. And she always had a candy bar snuck away somewhere. She could make the best grilled cheese in 2.5 seconds. And she didn't just slap the butter on, she melted the butter. She was the best host that there ever was. And she loved a joke. She, in the most intimate times in her life that I got to be a part of, she resonated faith and loss and triumph. And I think that you can take that away. And we would spend quiet times together too, because, sometimes it was an effort for her to place her hand over her trach to talk. And so I just learned so much by being quiet myself and observing. One of the things I tell my patients a lot when they're, everything's up in the air, I say, do you ever get quiet? Some people never get quiet. Some people have to have noise all the time. I know lots of people that have to have noise, some kind, all the time. But if you can get quiet, a lot of times you can, figure out what you're going to do. And so for me, I've been so grateful that I've been able to take negative and really push it forward. A bad day, I always say this to patients, a bad day is just a bad day. A bad week is just a bad week. A bad day is not a bad month or a bad year. A bad week is not a bad month or a bad year. And some people do have more than they can handle, but you've got to keep going. The other thing I would say, I tell people who have children and family is they're watching you. They're watching you. Tariq, do you pull from people in your family when you have a hard time?
Without question.
Yeah. So, you got to be careful what you're teaching your family. Are you teaching them that you give up? And giving up isn't stopping treatment. That's not a giving up. Giving up is just not living your life, because we're here for such a short time anyways, no matter whether we have cancer or not. And giving up is, for me and my posse of people, is not an option.
Come on now.
Maybe I learned that from the Dallas Cowboys.
Giving up, not an option.
Not an option.
Absolutely. So when we're talking about your journey, your amazing journey, Tina, and your growth from employee to business owner, and continuing to be that positive light for individuals who are having that tragedy, being that light and offering that hope. For those listening, not only I am Vision of Hope, not only Tina is Vision of Hope, but we are Vision of Hope. Shameless plug. But with that being said, after all that, and I can't think of anyone who is more worthy of getting an award more than you. And I know recently you've been doing some work with the National Breast Cancer Foundation, and I know they recently recognized you. Can you talk about some of the work that you do with that organization and the award that you received?
Sure. Thank you. So I have been working with the National Breast Cancer Foundation. They are a national organization and they are amazing. They meet the needs of women diagnosed with breast cancer today. I am a facilitator for them. I do support groups, and then I navigate the women diagnosed with breast cancer in all types of realms. I've been involved with nonprofit for a very long time, volunteering and through my company, but the National Breast Cancer Foundation is pretty unique because I find that they really, in my relationship with them, if I have somebody that has a need, if it is not within their scope, they are really good connectors. So I'm very proud of the work that I do with them. And I love the organization that they are, and they really seek out good partnerships and unique ways to help educate and honor women in the breast cancer journey. I received an award from them. It's the spirit of NBCF. I don't like talking about myself, but they surprised me, and they had a bunch of people, and they presented me with the Spirit of NBCF award for my work that I have done with the support group and the ladies that I've journeyed with through breast cancer. NBCF is pretty unique. It was started by a young lady by the name of Janelle, and they just celebrated their 30th anniversary. And the nonprofit world isn't for the faint of heart. I mean, it's hard work. They do something called Hope Kits, and the Hope Kits are sent to women diagnosed with breast cancer. And it's a way to let somebody with breast cancer know that people are caring and praying for them and in their corner that they've never even met. We're working on lots of projects to expand that even more. And I'm just so proud to be part of the organization. Yes, it was wonderful to have my family there, and they all surprised me. I cried like a 5-year-old. They sang Tina Turner's Simply the Best to me. I was totally shocked. Got to dance with my husband, which was great because he's such a good dancer. And it's wonderful, but it's not nearly as wonderful as the day-to-day work.
Wow.
So thank you for bringing that up. I appreciate it.
I have to stop at that last statement though, because I think that kind of left me speechless. Even though that award was great to be recognized and appreciated, you still go back to nowhere near as good as the day-to-day work. Why do you feel that way?
I feel that way because I really truly feel that that's why I was put on this earth. Losing my mom at a young age and losing my siblings and my dad. And now, I have a second generation that are getting cancer in my family. That's pretty frightening, right? Mm-hmm. But helping people in that really gives meaning to those that I've lost. It's very personal and very intimate for me. And I really feel like all of that heartache, true heartache, November is a tough time in our family because, we have death anniversaries, right? Those that we've lost. And the only way I can find meaning to the tragedy that happened is that I'm so blessed by these people who I'm with them at the most awful time in their life. But then they get better and they go on with their life. And then I'm still in touch with their lives. And then I don't hear from them for a while, and you don't hear from them for a while. And then, you see on Facebook, or they touch base a couple times a year, or you get a card from them, and cancer has totally changed their life. And then they feel like they can go on and do something else, something they've always wanted to do. And that's rewarding. I mean, that's the jam. I call it the magic. I use that word magic. I say that's magic. That's golden. Mm-hmm. Because that is what you hope for everybody. You don't get it all the time, but cancer's changing. You get it most of the time.
And so when we think about our growth and our journeys, and this has been such a great conversation with you, Tina, and really taking any tragedy and having hope and getting up and getting after whatever it is you want to do, your goals, your dreams, and recognizing that they're possible, right? You mentioned that when you talk about your barriers that were set on you when you were young, and your barriers about, you know what, let me just start my own business and do this because I can. And continuing to move forward and having support systems around you to encourage you. If you could think of, for the people who are listening, if there were one or two things you wanted to make sure that they left with when they were no longer listening and the podcast ends, what would those things be?
Well, I would want to remind everybody that everybody has something in their life that's a barrier. It doesn't matter what it is. I always say, if these walls could talk, because you think everybody has it all. And then when you peel those layers away, you find their scars, right? You see somebody and you look at them from the outside and it's just perfect. They got the perfect car, the perfect house, the perfect life.
Right.
You peel those layers away and we all have scars. We all have trials. We all have tribulations. But I like to think that I'm teaching people that you can live fully with cancer. You can live fully with a chronic illness. You can get back up when something knocks you down. But then I would also want to invite everybody to, we throw that word kindness around a little too much. It's kind of cliche, just be kind, all of those things. But I think that we need to remember that there's a great saying, it's wherever you go, whatever you do, remember to be kind, thoughtful, and generous. For we know not what burdens others may bear in their lives. And we don't know what somebody is facing on the day to day.
Right.
And people think you got to have lots of money to make a difference. You don't. You can do something little to make a difference in someone's life and make a difference in your own life, because we need to help ourselves too. So I would want people to know you don't have to go start your own business if that's not what you want to do.
Yeah.
But if you want to do the work, make it happen. It's tough work. It's not easy.
Mm-hmm.
And as you and I both know, it's hard shutting that mind off when you have that vision, right?
That's it.
Oh my gosh. We should let everybody know that when Tariq and I get together and talk, man, those ideas are bouncing around because I'm with him and then he gets me all excited and then, I'm off. And I hope I do the same for you. So I would want everybody to know that they can have a happy life too. I have a wonderful life with good balance. I have good family. I have people that I love. And then I have my patients and my company that I love too. Excuse me. I hope that it's a legacy.
Mm-hmm.
I hope that 100 years from now, that somebody is still figuring out how to help cancer patients.
Right. Absolutely. You mentioned that word legacy. And when I think about what I do on a daily basis, when I think about the platform that we have here on the podcast, I consistently think about leaving this world better than how I got it. And I hope that with this podcast and all the content I create and my daily conversations with individuals, that it's able to bring light to someone who needs to hear it. I don't know who needs to hear this conversation today, but hopefully that person gets to listen to it.
May it spark something in them. May our nuggets that we've spoken, may it spark something in them that says, I can do that. Yes,
yeah, you right there. We are talking to you. I'm pointing at you right now. Yes. Right? May it spark something in you. We're talking to you.
Absolutely.
All right. So with that being said, Tina, this has been such a great episode. But last but not least, if there was one word that you could pick that would describe where the future, what it kind of looks like for you, what would that one word be?
Oh my. I think I would resilience.
Okay.
Do you think resilience is a good word? I think, I have dreams also, right? So I hope I have the resilience. I'm halfway through writing a book.
Okay.
I hope I have the resilience to finish that book and to see that through. I hope I have the resilience to take good care of myself so I can take care of others.
Right.
I hope I have the resilience to guide people when they need me the most. So resilience for me is, bad days, but you put your feet on the floor and you try again. So I would say resilience. It maybe isn't as pretty as hope or triumph, but resilience for me is I don't give up and I don't quit.
But there's a certain level of like a higher level of thinking, I think, when you bring that word resilience into it, because you're talking about writing your book. Well, somebody listening's probably like, oh, well, you're writing a book. What could possibly go wrong with that? There's no resilience required. There's no type of obstacle. But there's always something. We've talked about this, right? Resiliency is going to be essential because no matter what, there's going to be some type of obstacle or conflict that's going to enter in, and recognizing that you're going to need the resilience to get through it. I mean, hey, yeah, you're there.
And resilience for me is, it's easy for me to say I'm too busy when really if I got up an hour early every morning and, sat at my computer and did those next chapters, I'd be done before you know it. So
Right.
sometimes we're our own worst enemies. So resilience is a word that I like to use. I'm a visual person too. So if I write those words down, I can make that happen. So resilience for me is not just keep going, but to understand, not get boxed in and say, well, I've done enough. I've done enough.
Yeah. That's amazing. Tragedy to triumph, resiliency, continued hope. And you bring all those things to the table, Tina, and I encourage everybody else to bring those things to the table in their daily lives, and the limits, they will no longer exist. And it kind of makes me think about my journey when it comes to blindness and moving to different places, and those limits that I was told and being told that I have to be boxed in, and there are only certain expectations and goals that I can accomplish as a blind person. And I was like, we're not doing that. And I encourage everybody here listening, don't let people do that to you either.
I could not agree more. And I would say in what I see every day, Tariq, I see a lot of sighted people that are blind. I see a lot of sighted people that, they're closed off. They can't think of anything more than what they've always done. And so, you've heard lots of people say, we don't do that here. We don't know. We don't do that here, And so I think that meeting you, we're all teachers. Meeting you has taught me a lot. And following your podcast, your page, when you speak wisdom into us, I think that it's good. A lot of times it's just what I need for the day. So I would encourage those that currently are following you, we need to spread that word of your vision of hope, because we get way more negative than we do positive.
Right.
In our day. And so we need someone like you to spread that. That's one of the things that I love for people, like, are you Audible? Are you a YouTuber? How do you get your information? And then I give clients homework. I give patients homework, and I've given them your page homework. I want you to look at Tariq's page. I want you to tell me next time about his story, and let's talk about it. What do you think? How did that help you? And sometimes just that little bit of listening, that little bit can turn the corner for someone. And that's what I hope happens by someone seeing this. But more importantly, I hope this grows. I know it's going to grow. It already has. But let's let it take on a life of its own, because it's needed.
Right.
It's needed.
Right. Let's get some more positivity in the world.
Yes.
I mean, if we all just kind of thought about, let's put a little bit more into the tank, and let's see what this world can turn into. Tina, thank you so much for being here, sharing your story, and letting people to know that if they're not subscribed to the channel, hit subscribe and hit the like button. But
Absolutely.
but with that being said, Tina, I think we went on quite a journey here. And I just want to thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it. And thank you.
Oh, you are so welcome. The only other thing I want to say to you is you did good, kid.
You did good. Excellent. And remember, everybody, thank you for listening. And not only I am Vision of Hope, but we are Vision of Hope. Have a good day, everybody.
Bye-bye now.
When adversity came, I could have fell apart, but I chose instead to follow my heart. When adversity comes, I will never run, I will adjust, adapt, and overcome. Vision.